Well, it's probably I need to roll back a little bit actually. On my first trip out to France, well, it's probably I need to roll back a little bit actually because going back to women, coming out of prison, um, I I'd only had one relationship before I was in prison, which was a very brief affair with a troubled lady, another person had been abused, um, and then when I came out of prison, um, and there seems to be a rolling theme in my life that I seem to attract. I don't know whether there's a mutual understanding of each other, but I seem to attract people that have got problems. So my first girlfriend when I come out of prison was this girl that I knew before I was in prison, a local lass. She had a lot of social issues. Now when you're older, you can sort of probably understand it a lot more. But she was a loner, and she was actually into horses, funnily enough, and she could only talk about horses, and we got together, and that was quite turbulent. She'd basically been not sexually abused, but she had been abused by previous boyfriends and stuff. And I remember her. She was there the day I come out of prison, funnily enough, and for want of a better term, it was my at that point my only one night stand. But at least I knew who she was. And I didn't see her for 6 months, and then she came knocking on my mother's door um, with this little puppy dog in her arms, pissing down with rain. She's soaking wet. We've taken her in, and then she's all over me. And we had a relationship, short relationship. And I would say, probably looking back at it, she was probably Asperger's because she didn't understand social interaction. She was lacking pleases and thank yous and stuff like that. And she 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 would, on the outside, she would take the piss. My mum actually kicked her out because, without asking, she poured herself a glass of wine, for instance. And my mum thought, well, she's been living here for a few weeks. I think it might have even been a month. With rent free, free food, and without even asking, or without even saying, oh, by the way, I've poured a glass of wine, or do you mind if I have a glass of wine, or whatever. My mum caught her pouring this glass of wine, and basically just kicked her out the door. I was beside myself with worry, and when I finally tracked her down, was at some homeless place homeless shelter in Southend. And with my help, I got her a bed sit, and I actually moved into the bed sit with her for a little while. Then eventually, because I was working, we moved into rented accommodation. But things move on, and in relationships, you're young, you're both young, and yeah, it wasn't to be, clearly. And she went one way, I went another, and I moved on to the next person. Now, the next young lady in my life, she would. I'm not going to mention any names, but she was actually sexually abused by her father, and it was very difficult for me to actually understand how she used to actually go back to her parents' house purely to see her mum and her brother, even though her mum knowingly let her husband abuse her children. And that was my first brush with righteousness. Is this guy was actually a local councillor, Liberal Democrats councillor, and he actually became the mayor of Rochford District Council. And it was when he was running for mayor of Rochford District Council, I remember him standing on his soapbox in Raleigh High Street and giving all this spiel. And I actually confronted him because the police couldn't do anything about what had happened, because back then it was just, I remember the lady in question, she gave video evidence, because she was in foster care when I first met her. She'd given video evidence to the police, and the Crown Prosecution Services had actually said that her video evidence wasn't strong enough to build a case against someone of his social standing. And you know, knowing what had happened to her, and I, you know, still to this day, I completely believe it happened to her. I remember seeing him stand on his soapbox, giving his spiel about how he's, you know, he'll be the good mayor and all the rest of it, and I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I publicly confronted him in front of hundreds of people, and I actually ended up getting arrested for public order offences. And I just basically got cautioned and let go because the police knew, they just couldn't do anything about it. So I just basically got warned, you know, it's not the way to go around things. So I do have, I believe I have a very strong set of morals. So that was that time, and this young lady, actually, funny enough, this is how I actually ended up going to France. I'd already started doing snowboarding and doing holidays, and then I was already told by her foster carer before she moved out of foster care and got her own flat, and then I started living with her. I was told by a foster carer, a lady called Dawn, not to read too much into our relationship because statistically abused children generally have a stream of relationships through their life and can't settle because of, you know, it clearly must mentally affect them. And you know, the long and short of it was she shit all over me while I was away in France. I started doing my first season in Val d'Isère, and bloody helicopters coming over now. So yeah, I started my first season in Val d'Isère in 2000, 99-2000, and the whole idea was I went out there in the December, and I was going to come back in the February, and she was going to come and join us for the rest of the season. And when I came back in the February, it was blatantly obvious that she had been shit all over me. I came back as a surprise for Valentine's, and the look on her friend's face when I walked through the door said it all. So that was the end of that relationship, and then I basically moved on to my third girlfriend, someone who was basically became a seasonaire, who I then had a 14-year relationship with, and who became my wife, and is one of my closest friends, and I know it annoys her partner now that we are so close, and which is annoying to me because, you know, I think he's a fantastic guy, and I think they get on so well together. And funnily enough, we were actually finally getting divorced. The paperwork was signed the day before I came out to Europe to do this tour. So, but we will still be good friends, and we, you know, clearly we have a son together and everything. Now we had a 14-year relationship, and there was never any problems at all. Never any hint of issues that I'm supposedly have got, although I know I have got some traits and stuff which we'll come to when we start talking about Asperger's. But yeah, there was never any problems. I never had any problems with her. She never had any problems with me. And there has been some things that I've been accused of sort of more recently, which is like, well, if I was like that, then how could I possibly have a 14-year loving relationship with someone? And that not come out, you know? So, yeah. But I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to try and defend what people have been saying recently. So, anyway, that ended purely because, realistically, the stress of having a newborn, I hadn't quite realised how much, you know, a lady being pregnant and then giving birth, how much that changes them, not necessarily permanently, but you know, sometimes just temporarily. No one tells you these things when you're having a child. No one tells you how to bring the child up. No one tells you how things are going to happen. And you know, I don't think it was a case of postnatal depression or anything silly like that. But she basically turned into me, and I was. I know that I was quite, not sure the word, it definitely wasn't controlling, but I would definitely speak out of turn. I would probably, the majority of the time, wear the trousers in the relationship. Now, if I spoke out of turn too much, don't get me wrong, she would soon you know, put me down, and I would back off and apologise very bloody quickly. But she actually started talking quite harshly to me at the end of our relationship, and it opened my eyes to how I spoke to her sometimes. And hence I've always been very careful since that day. So this is what, 5 years ago now. I've been very careful not to be like that with other people. No, I can't help it if sometimes I speak quite harshly, and I do sometimes just blatantly speak the truth. Well, I used to anyway, because I don't have a switch. And one thing that was pointed out to me with a more recent girlfriend, but the girlfriend after Louise, actually, my wife, was that I can be quite outrageous sometimes, and that is an Asperger's trait. I can actually say things quite publicly that you probably shouldn't say. And it's only recently getting into this whole Asperger's thing that I've realised that that's actually a trait. It's not just me being loud and outspoken. It is actually technically a trait. So yeah, so I realised that basically with the lovely Louise that you know, I spoke out of turn to her quite a bit, and then when she started speaking out of turn to me, at that point I'd already started up my own business, and I actually met someone else and had a midlife crisis and run away from my 14-year relationship and my very young child, and basically started a relationship with a slightly older, or someone my own age, a year or two older than me, over in Reading, and it was a fantastic relationship. Someone who was highly intelligent, highly qualified, cardiac nurse, become a nurse prescriber, so she'd done the same qualifications as a doctor, so she could prescribe all of the drugs and stuff in hospitals. And we were equals, total equals. She had her own aesthetics business, I had the photography business, and at one point we were very nearly going to go full out on an actual aesthetics clinic, and I was going to manage it and she was going to be the practitioner, and things were looking up. And the only downside, there was only two downsides to that relationship. The first downside was that she was a drinker, and because of my epilepsy I don't drink, and I never have really been a drinker. I've been more of a dope smoker, as I've previously mentioned, than a drinker. But because she was a drinker, I then started to try and keep up with her, and you know, we'd have drink bottles of champagne and stuff, and that kicked my epilepsy back off again, which is probably the reasons why I've had such a bad time with epilepsy over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, and started fitting in the daytimes, is because of the alcohol. So that's one of the reasons why I just simply don't drink. You know, it's a joke on this page when I say, like, this is my second alcoholic drink in 3 months, and you know, I generally just don't drink for fear that it's going to kick off the epilepsy again. The other reason why things didn't really pan out, but I can't hold it, you know, use this as a total excuse, because generally the biggest reason for splitting up with this lady was her alcohol consumption. And I think realistically, for a long time I'd been unhappy in that relationship because of her, and purely only because of her alcohol consumption. There was nothing wrong with the relationship whatsoever apart from that. But there was a certain other young lady who I employed in my photographic business who we'd take a shine into one another, let's say, and the flirtation led to one thing to another, and we did start having a relationship. We started seeing each other every now and then eventually when I split up with the lady in Reading, I then had she gave me an ultimatum, you know, either stop seeing her or, you know, stop seeing the person in Reading. And I was very deeply unhappy with the person in Reading. I'd already got built up such strong feelings for this other person, that's what I done. So, you know, and that is basically the amount of women I've been with in my life. Not many compared to a lot, and I'm sure there's other people like me that, you know, haven't slept around and stuff. I don't have the ability to chat women up because of my social fear of rejection. I have clearly, as I've explained with the whole money thing and going to prison, I have a very strong set of morals over money. I mean, going back to the lady in Reading, you know, she was very affluent. She had her own house and everything. And there was one point she had £1,000 bill she needed to pay. She didn't have the money. I'm like, no worries, I've got a couple of grand. I'll give her £1,000. Just give it back to you when you can. And from that day onwards, she never mentioned it. And that grated on me and grated on me and grated on me. And it was like, I've helped you out of a hole and given you £1,000 and you've not even mentioned it. You know, it was like, oh yeah, thanks, appreciate that, you know, and that was it, you know. And that, you know, that always grated on me right to the very end. I mean, that wouldn't have been the reason why I would have split up with her. The alcohol definitely was the reason, but that was still there on the back of my mind because I wouldn't do that to someone. I just simply would not do that to someone. I hate owing money. The only person that I actually owe money to and have always owed money to and have fairly taken the piss with is my brother. And realistically, out of the many thousands, and probably like 15 grand I owe my brother, probably closer to 20 even. You know, we have an inheritance coming to us, you know, hopefully many years time, and if it was really an issue, then, you know, he can have the money out of that. So but there's not one other person in my life that I have ever owed money to, and if I've borrowed money, I've always paid it back instantly. So yeah, I've got a very strong set of morals, particularly when it comes to money. So when someone owes me money, bearing in mind that I will openly, if I've got it, happily help people and pay for stuff, and you know, and if I'm taking someone out or if I'm going out for an evening, yeah, that's part of going out. You spend money, you know. If you go on holiday and you put money on a credit card or you spend money, that's part of life. You spend money. If you help someone out and you don't expect it to be paid back, you know, that's part and parcel. It's going to cost you money. I don't think much of it. What I do draw the line at is when, for whatever reason, because you know, even though you know the reason will be because they have a difficulty with pleases and thank yous and etc. You draw the line at not being thanked or not being acknowledged, and then even after you've split up in a relationship, and you're trying to just be friends, because every single person I've ever split up with, even the girl that shit all over me years ago, you know, I could still talk to her now because I don't have bad feelings with people. Yeah, sometimes it lasts, you know, 6 months, a year. My brother's wife, for instance, I didn't speak to her for 2 years because she tried it on with me and I just thought she was bang out of order. But even, you know, even all these people I still talk to, I still get along with. I don't hold grudges. So I always try and be friendly and try and stay friends with people, and especially people I care about, and I will always try and help people out. And recently that's been taken the wrong way, and it got to the point recently where the whole money thing. You know, I'm not affluent. I don't own my own house anymore. I'd like to, and I had a fair amount of money last year, and I thought, yeah, I could put this towards getting another mortgage, finally get myself back on the property ladder. And one way or another, that had just dwindled away with me making grand gestures and paying for things and stuff. And well, this is obviously going on for time because I keep filling memory cards up and the camera keeps switching off. Right, well, I need to wrap this up really because I've not really filmed this correctly. I've not said a lot of things I wanted to say, and I've started rattling into more recent things that I didn't really want to get into, but I might use some footage in a different way later on. So I will complete what I was saying, that money has become an issue for me recently. There's been a lot of discussion out there, outside me doing this, about me and money, and I've been controlling things via money, and that really gets on my shitting nerves, because I have not ever once given anything to someone and then made a demand. I have never turned around and said, well, I've been paying for X, Y, and Z. I've been paying for all this stuff. It has nearly bankrupted me. I want you to sleep with me. I want you to come out. I want you to do this. I've never once said that at all. I've never once even hinted something like that. And in actual fact, after a relationship splits up, and and I've just swallowed all of this, and I'm still doing stuff, people, trying to please them, screwed up in the head, not really quite understanding why I'm so screwed up in the head, but always wanting to please people. But there's no money left. When I've got the money, I've then completed a few things that still needed completing on vehicles, for instance, I'm still talking to this person, and this is not like I'm sort of hammering on their case every day. This is like, there'll be sometimes a day or two or three where I've not sent a message, and then there might be a couple of messages a day when something specific's actually happened, something I've got to talk about, like, hey, look, I've actually finally gone and done this, and I'm finally getting this together with the business, and I'm really starting to get to grips with things again. And we seem to be on quite a level ground, and everything seems to be cool. Obviously, always in the background, I'm hopeful that things would work out again between us. But if it didn't, it didn't. I'd started getting used to it, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I've got a problem. I've got this bill. It's 300 quid. But it's not like, I've got this bill, it's 300 quid. Could you possibly help me out, please? It's just, send me a picture of a bill. Oh my God, I can't believe this. How am I going to afford this? Well, to me, that is a bit like asking. So it's like, okay, look, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'll help you. I'll just pay it. And then when I'm, there's a sort of similar time. I'm just sort of, hi, I've got some stuff to give you. How about, a bit of lunch? Oh, well, yeah, okay, if you're coming round, can you do me a favour? I've lost my card. Can you buy something at a shop while you're there? So I buy this thing, I go around there, you've lost your card, have my credit card back, so you can buy the few bits you need to buy. And it's like, yeah, thanks, I'll give it straight back to you. When I found my card, I'll just give it straight back to you. Or when they get the replacement card, they give it straight back to me. And then it never materialises, and it's not like, oh, my card's arrived, here's your card back. It's they've kept hold of it and they keep using it, and it's like, I can see it being used, and I just don't say nothing. And it was only 160 quid, but it's still, originally you wanted to spend like 50 quid on something, I don't know, a tank of fuel and a bit of food or something, and then it's 160 quid because you've been buying bits and pieces for your pets and stuff. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't give a shit, but I'm not supposed to be responsible for this. And again, I just say nothing. And then it's, all of a sudden, I'm still just the same message every now and then, and then it's like, oh, I need to. I suddenly get a message saying, I'm going to come around and borrow the van. Oh, are you? How about, is it okay if I can? Turns out it's to take a sick animal to a vet or something. Yep, fine, no problem. I haven't got a problem with that. It'd just be nice if it wasn't put in such a way that I'm coming round and just taking something without basically being asked. And then, you know, another week or so goes by and it's like, oh, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing at the weekend? Could you come round to someone's house and board their loft out? Okay, you know, I'll help you out. I'll come round, I'll board the loft out. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll be there and everything. But actually what actually happens is I'm getting given the set of keys for this person's house. I go around it by myself and just basically do the job. And then sit around for 2 or 3 hours waiting for them to turn up and then help them move their stuff and then help them a few days later going through their stuff, or, you know, and I want to be with this person. I want to spend time with this person, and clearly I'd like to be with this person, but the whole time it just feels like you're having the piss taken out of you. And I keep making excuses for that. You know, what more can I say? You know, we all have issues, and yeah, you're not supposed to be together, but you want to be with this person, and apparently they don't, and apparently I should have known this from a month, 2 months beforehand. But you go, oh, you know, clearly they've got an aching back, and you start massaging their shoulders and rubbing their back, and it gets a little bit close and personal again. And they don't stop you. And, you know, obviously I'm reading too much into it, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to show this, but it's been a head fuck. It has truly been a head fuck. Anyway, I'm going to stop because I've got to go and hire a car because got a horse riding tomorrow. So more GoPro footage, and apparently I'm supposed to be galloping. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. Right, I'm going to go. I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to wrap this up because I'm on my third set of memory cards, so Christ knows how much time I've spent talking to the camera. Batteries are probably almost flat. Yeah. God knows if I'll ever use this footage. And one thing I'm not going to say, which I always say, and I've got to get out of the habit of saying, is thank you. Why am I thanking you? You should be thanking me for me telling you my life story. Right, that's it.